Before we start today's episode, I gotta tell you about this amazing vinyl furniture I just got from SidetrackedWorkshop.com. I now have the double sidekick model in my front room, and it's absolutely killer. It holds a couple hundred records, and it looks beautiful. Check it out on my Instagram. It's very handsome indeed. And when you get a moment, check out SidetrackedWorkshop.com and show off your vinyl in style. That's SidetrackedWorkshop.com.
Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Oh, well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 486 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And today's a long one, people. It's nearly 2 hours, but let me set it up because I think it's going to be pretty interesting, especially for you hardcore record collectors. So, in recent weeks, I've been thinking, we're coming upon 10 years of this podcast. We're nearly at 500 episodes. And over that time, unsurprisingly, there's been a ton of changes in the vinyl record collecting community. And, of course, the overall economy kind of moves that as well. And I thought, maybe we should pause for a bit and have a chat. Let's talk about some of the topics and the evolution of record collecting and, some of the trends that we've seen, some of the things that we've left behind, and perhaps some of the things that we can expect going forward. Record collecting isn't just this static hobby of ours. It's constantly moving. There are different things being introduced, different trends, different age demographics that are causing the hobby and available vinyl records to evolve. So I thought, let's get a couple of smart guys together and discuss some of these common topics of interest. So in doing this, I reached out to a few fellas that I know are great speakers, solid communicators, and also don't mind being truthful. It's easy to say, oh, everything's great and move on. But I wanted to speak with people who would not be hesitant about covering and commenting on some of the more delicate or controversial issues around record collecting. So I reached out to a few folks that you probably know as well. Billy Fields from Warner Music Group and Dillon Smith of Noble Records. And the three of us spoke about the state of vinyl collecting and what to expect for the year 2025. And we discuss the shifting trends for vinyl collectors. We explore how the market has matured beyond the quote-unquote vinyl renaissance phase. We talk about what's happening now with normalized production capacity and evolving collector demographics that are now starting to shift towards younger buyers. Now, anyone who is a record collector, from hardcore to casual, I think will relate to many of these topics today. We talk about how vinyl retail and collecting habits have changed since the pandemic boom years. We talk about FOMO buying and some of the more selective purchasing patterns that we're seeing emerging. We also discuss insights about pressing plant developments, sustainable manufacturing initiatives. We talk about the changing genres and the different valuations as older collectors start to age out of the market. So, again, if you're a record collector, this is a conversation you'll likely want to hear, and I'm sure we'll also have strong opinions on as well. Now, this is the audio podcast. Obviously, if you want to see us on video, well, this is also being shared on YouTube at the Noble Records YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@NobleRecords. Hopefully you guys are already subscribing to Dillon's video feed there. He's got some phenomenal videos. I doubt I'm telling you guys something you don't already know. But if you want to see the three of us talking, well, you head over there to youtube.com/@NobleRecords. So with that in mind, get yourself comfortable, because again, this is a long one. And let's talk to Billy Fields and Dillon Smith about the state of vinyl collecting in 2025. Well, this week we're doing a bit of a joint episode between the Vinyl Guide podcast and Noble Records YouTube channel, which is absolutely smashing it, Dillon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We've got today with us, of course, Dillon Smith of Noble Records, and Billy Fields, who is, you're like the grand poobah of vinyl at Warner Music Group. What's your title?
Oh, sure. We'll go with that. That's fine. I'll accept that dignitary position. Sure.
The high hokey finoki of vinyl records.
I actually like that better.
We thought we'd have a little bit of a conversation today about the state of vinyl collecting. We're in a new year, and a lot has happened over the recent years, and I think we're at a position now where we're starting to stabilize a bit in the post-COVID world. So it's worth having a conversation about some pretty key topics for the vinyl record collecting community. So, guys, thanks for making the time. First off, maybe before we look forward, let's look back a bit. 2024 was a very interesting year. How would each of you summarize, what were some surprising trends you saw? What's the state of vinyl collecting, either, in the industry or for yourself personally? What are some things you've observed over the last 12 months? Maybe, Billy, let's start with you.
Okay. I would actually say that, strangely, the year 2024 was probably one of the lighter years for my out and on the hunt and purchasing, finding things that were missing. But what I did find myself doing more than anything else was sort of maintaining subscriptions, right? Like one of the things that I've tried to do is always sort of keep myself in the vault with Third Man Records and keep myself at VMP with a couple tracks. I sort of, because I'm on the industry side, I think it's, I do this with independent record stores too. I feel that I have a responsibility as being a part of the business to actually be a part of the business, right? So leaving my money in places where I think that it should be, as opposed to in other places that maybe it shouldn't be, right? So that was something I certainly maintained. But then I also paid attention to those things that popped up for me that ended up being surprises, or you get turned on to something that, for all the reasons that you should have already known about it, it's something that hits you in a new way, or it hits you at a time when you're able to do something about it. So the one example of that I will give, because it's happened a few times. So you get turned on to a record in all the ways you get turned on to a record. But in this case, it was this record, which I'll show you. Lee Dorsey, Yes We Can. Obviously, Alan Toussaint produced. It's a phenomenal record. And did I know about the record before I was exposed to it from David Hepworth's Instagram feed? No, I did not. And so, I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it in public, but you kind of got to let your weaknesses out so that, you can get rid of them. But the miracle of collecting for me in 2024 was truly this idea that you could be turned on to a record that isn't available in a record store. You can't walk into it and get an original copy easily, right? But through the magic of collecting, through the magic of Discogs, through the magic of connecting to record stores globally from wherever you are, you can do this. You can get turned on to a record, find a great copy that's in great condition that didn't cost me too much, right? But that also led to me finding this copy of a Lee Dorsey record at Domino Sound Recordings in New Orleans, which is like one of the, didn't even say that. I hope I said the name of the shop right. It's one of the best record stores on the planet. And you have to pay cash, and there is no internet, and you got to walk in, you got to find things. So there's this confluence that happened for me in 2024 that sort of blew apart the idea of what it means to go everywhere all the time and be always on the hunt, but actually be able to, in the business of whatever you're doing, find these gems and jewels that are absolutely still out there everywhere, and they're just kind of waiting to be picked up. That's what I would say most exemplifies my 2024. I didn't buy as much music as I have in years past, but I stuck to some of the things that needed to be there, and then I made that connection between being exposed to records, finding records both through Discogs and through record stores, and making sure that loop is closed all the time, keeping that healthy and moving.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, Dillon, I watch your videos. I have a feeling I have I have an idea of some of the things that the trends that you've had, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts and your observations of last year.
Well, for me, I got two different sides, the shop, three different sides now, the shop, the label, and my personal collection. So With my personal collection, we'll start there. I mean, the hole always gets deeper. And it's always hard to dig your way out of it. But
So you started with more records at the end of 2024 than you entered the year in.
oh yeah, it's not a good year if you don't do that. But
That's a
no,
good point, by the way.
like right now, like when I moved into this room 2 years ago, and now I'm like, it's not big enough. Like I was like, because I thought at first I was like, this is plenty of space. I'll never fill it up, and now it's getting really full. So, anyways, so for me, like I collect all the obscure stuff, and I'm always finding new stuff. And then, like with having the shop, I'm always trying to find, really the nicest copies of even my favorite records that are, even if it's like a Boston record or something. I want to find the cleanest, the promo, whatever. And so I'm always, ditching old copies, bringing in new copies, and then always learning about music every day and trying to find them. And I connect a lot with other collectors, trade stuff, buy stuff, whatever. And so that's always ramping up. So every year I go a little bit more crazy. And like the beginning of the year, I'm like, I'm going to behave this year, and I never do. So from a personal side, but then also, I think earlier this year, just with having the store, you can get comfortable and you just take whatever trades come in, and then, running the shop can get kind of boring, because the people bring the same Billy Joel and Eric Clapton and Barbra Streisand records in all the time, and so you just get the same stuff over and over again. And so for me, like, it's not that I got bored of it. I started feeling myself burning out a little bit. And then, you picture these old, you've been in the record stores where the guy sitting behind the counter is this old curmudgeon that just hates life and hates you and hates music. And he's just, I don't want to be that. So I'm like, how do I rekindle this fire? And so for me, it's like, I got to go digging more. So this year I've dug more than I probably have ever in my life. I try to at least once a week go look at a collection or go out. I mean, even if it's a handful of thrift stores or whatever. So I've bought a ton of records this year for the shop and for myself. And so just kind of that's my real true love of collecting records, is just finding something in some dude's garage. I mean, I love getting out and digging, like in the nitty gritty, in attics, garages, yard sales, whatever. I love doing that. So I've done a lot more of that this year. And then in the shop, it's just totally different. Like, I'm sure we'll get into this more, but just the climate has changed so much as far as like when you buy a collection, if a ton of it's modern stuff, like the modern side has totally changed because so many things have been overpressed, and like just the market for modern vinyl for my store, when it comes in used, is a lot different than it was 2 years ago. So, and we'll get into that more, but just kind of buying modern collections and modern music and stuff like that has shifted quite a bit. I've noticed that. And then, and like you were saying, for years we've seen this whole thing climb, and we're all like, is it going to come crashing down, And I think it's we're starting to feel it, but it's I think it's best case scenario. So it's been a good year, and it's been interesting. But yeah, I guess that's where I'm at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. I'm excited. I'm definitely, I bought that Voice of America collection, which is nuts. So I'm weeding out some of my old stuff, bringing in new stuff. So anything I can do to keep me excited and on the hunt is a good place to be.
So it's interesting, the quantity. You say the market is still kind of growing. Billy, I guess you have facts and figures. You track this stuff quite regularly. Vinyl consumption is still on the rise. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, very much so. We're now in the 18th year of positive growth year over year. This year is going to end up vinyl being up 4.9% in the US. The UK just reported I think one of their most successful physical years in a couple decades, with vinyl growing again, I think in double digits possibly is the percentage. Looking at the markets around the world, the same could be said. UK is definitely the strongest growth market this year. If you look at, say, the big ones for vinyl specifically, so US, UK, Europe, and that could be Germany, France, Netherlands, or Benelux, Netherlands, Belgium, etc.,
Yeah.
and Japan. But all those markets are showing positive growth year on year this year. UK leading that charge, but US is still absolutely in the space as well.
Any insight as to why the UK is outpacing some of the others?
I think a lot of it has to do with just, I know this is crazy to say, and we forget about this, but it's about the release schedule. It's about the records that actually come out physically in a market that's aligned with whatever they're doing digitally, and it's about that release schedule. I think that certainly it doesn't hurt that Taylor Swift is a worldwide phenomenon and she continues to sell just a boatload of records. But lots of pop records really dominated charts this year, but not just in the US, but also in the UK. So I think those two things specifically, release schedule and then having that aligned, sort of all the heat around a release combined, and then pop music. It's just like, it's interesting. There's a story that was circulating earlier this year about the disappearance of bands on the top of the charts. I can't remember the quotes, but basically the person talking about the story was saying, like, there was only 3 bands on the top 50 of the chart, and my God, look at that, that's terrible. And I think, well, that's weird because I don't mean to name check David Hepworth again, but I really love what he's doing. I love his books, and I had to finish reading one of his great books about 1971 called Never a Dull Moment. And in that book, he talks about the fact that there was this complete flip from bands in 71 to singer-songwriter artists. So it's like, we've done all this so many times. It's like a constant revolving door, and we're in it all the time. And it's not surprising that it's pop music that's leading the charge because, pandemic brought new generations of buyers into the market to buy records, to experience vinyl for the first time fresh. And the records that they're buying are not the records that the 3 of us would buy. They're different records, which I think speaks to Dillon's point about modern collections. Like, it's a very different buying experience for someone that's bringing in a collection he's built over the last decade, as opposed to even the decade prior to that. And now we've been in this almost 2 decades. This is the thing that kills me. I was playing a Numero Comp Titan, the Power Pop box set that I had picked up at Sound Fix in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I was talking to the one of my coworkers about it, and I was like, I think this must have been like, I don't know, like 2017 or 2018 when I was out there. No, the store closed in 2013. Like, that's a decade ago. And my mind was blown about how much time has happened since this all began in 2006, 2007, 2008. Like, man, that's like an entire kid's life. They're no longer kids. They're in their 20s, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
My kids have seen the piles grow and grow and grow from their youth to right now. I guess what I was asking about for UK is because I know they've gone through quite a few economic changes. They've experienced Brexit. I'm wondering 100%. if those sort of factors had any, because I would have, from what I understand of the UK, and I may be totally wrong, they're experiencing a struggling economy at this point. So to hear that the UK is booming in terms of vinyl, it's just, I guess it was against the expectation that I may have had.
Well, there's a couple things about that that's interesting. So for the first thing is that whenever a local economy suffers or struggles or is sort of, I'm not going to say recessed or depressed, but when it's not firing, typically, and this is historically kind of plays out, entertainment products that are the most inexpensive in the suite of entertainment products. So let's compare records to video games as an example. Entertainment products don't necessarily take a hit when the economy goes down because it's one of those things that it doesn't actually, relative to other costs, cost as much to have a lot of enjoyment, right? Because this whole thing, like, you can buy a record one time, and whether it's $25 or it's $100, you're spending that once, and you get to play that record as many times as you want for as long as you want, right? So when economies struggle, entertainment doesn't necessarily take as much of a hit. Now, going out to shows might, because that's more money, right? It's involves a lot of things other than just go out and get a record, put it in a record player. And I think the other thing is that, you know, Brexit, for whatever it has turned into or what it was in the beginning, I think that I'm really speaking completely out of turn at this point because I really don't know. You'd have to talk to someone in the market. But I think that because that's all now mature as well, that there is this understanding of, there are plants that are operating in the UK now. There are things that you can actually buy from locally that you need. That's happening as well too. So
Right.
I mean, I think that those two things are probably the things that are helping make it happen.
Right. So Dillon, he said, new records are booming. What sort of changes and evolutions are you seeing in the used market, collections, sort of collections you see?
So, just for point of reference, our shop is probably 70% used, 30% new. So we do it, but we just like the type of people that come into my store. Some local stores do like mostly new stuff. A lot of them do, but just my vision for my shop when I open it up is I want this to be a store that I would want to go into. So like the deeper I go in the rabbit holes of collecting, the more disconnected I feel at a regular record store when it's like, hey, they got a bunch of stuff, but this is like, this is not, I want to go a little deeper than this. So I wanted to have a shop to where we get first pressing stuff, we get jazz stuff you can't find, like funk, psych, stuff like that. So that's kind of buying the collections and getting the gems, and like, people could come in and buy $5, $2, $3 records, load up on them. So that's kind of, we have a little bit of a different vision for a store than most other stores. We don't do record store day most of the time, or if we do it, we buy the 5 titles we know are going to sell, and that's it. So, so for me, people still come in for the regular releases and stuff like that. But the people that are coming out to the shop, because our shop's not like in the middle of a real thickly populated area. We're about 30 minutes from Charlotte, which is the big city near us. So we're a little bit out of the way, a little bit on the outskirts. But the people that are making the trek to come out of the shop are the deep collectors that they want to come out there, and it's when we put out that stuff. So when I'm buying I think, just to clarify what I was saying before, with modern collections and stuff like that, it has changed considerably because you had the part-time collectors that came out in 2020, and they started it, and it was fun, it was great. But now a few years later, they're not feeling it so much. So they sell their collections off, and that gets recirculated, and so you're getting like modern music, and then you get a lot of like the Beatles reissues and the Zeppelin reissues and the Pink Floyd reissues, and a lot of that stuff's coming back in the shop, and so like, I don't know, it's such a long story, but when we're going through a collection, the modern stuff is not going to hold its value like the old school stuff, and so I've seen some of that happen. But as far as like, what you're saying about vinyl being on the rise, I totally get that. And like the climate that it's at right now is way better than it was 10 years ago. It's crazy how much better it is now. So at the shop, we have seen, certain genres, jump up to where more people are coming out for metal than ever before. And we have the Taylor Swift stuff. That's the big, everybody's got it. But we order a lot less of that stuff because so many people are going to Target and Walmart, and Target and Walmart can sell it cheaper than we can. So like sometimes like our wholesale price is right at that Target or Walmart price. So it's like, let's go get it there. But we order some of it, but we're not selling the Taylor Swift by and large, like a lot of it, just because a lot of people are getting into Target and Walmart. So anyways, I don't know. I'm not an expert on new vinyl because that's not my drive as much as the old school stuff. But that being said, I do have a label, and we're having records pressed all the time. So I got my foot in both camps, I guess.
So in terms of collections that you're seeing, like, you're starting to see more collections come in? One thing that is an unfortunate occurrence in any sort of collecting is you get these older collectors that start to pass away. Their collections are coming up, so I think that's something we're going to start seeing more and more. I don't know if you're experiencing that. What sort of collections and what sort of changes in those sort of collections are you seeing? Hey there, audiophiles. If you're seeking stylish furniture to showcase your stereo and record collection, well, look no further than SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Sidetracked Workshop designs extraordinarily elegant record cabinets and consoles that add sophistication and panache to your music hobby. Handcrafted in the good old USA in the vinyl-loving city of Portland, Oregon, Sidetracked Workshop's designs are a music lover's dream. Made with real walnut veneered wood and brass accents, these gorgeous designs add class and taste to the record room and ship fully assembled and ready to enjoy. Just check out the designs for yourself at SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Look, you spend thousands of dollars on records. Don't keep them in a crate, and don't risk your records on those feeble wooden pegs from IKEA. Your music deserves the dignity of Sidetracked Workshop. That's SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Elegant solutions for the vinyl lifestyle. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10. One thing that is an unfortunate occurrence in any sort of collecting is you get these older collectors that start to pass away. Their collections are coming up, so I think that's something we're going to start seeing more and more. I don't know if you're experiencing that. What sort of collections and what sort of changes in those sort of collections are you seeing?
Yeah, it's funny because when I was younger, 10, 15 years ago, somebody'd say, hey, my grandpa died and I got his records. Do you want them? I'm like, no, because they're going to be, the Al
Count
Hurt,
Basie and
stuff like that. That's just
right?
kind of, I'd always look at it, but but now people are like, my grandpa died, and it's like psychedelic rock, and so it's like it's shifted quite a lot in the past 15 years. So, of course, it's always sad when somebody dies and all that stuff, but it is a natural part of any cycle is that stuff that's coming in from people that are passing away, the people that were in their 70s, like now, and sometimes 80s, they were collecting the psych rock in the 60s. So some of that stuff, I guess the wave of collections are sometimes getting better, but as far as like the stuff that we see coming in on a regular basis, we do have a lot of people that were in it for a few years and then they're hopping out of it. There's so much of that going on, and it's kind of a little bit of a curse, a blessing and a curse. But they'll say, "Hey, my disc collection median is $38,000," and so a lot of those like modern records that were out of print for a little bit and then came back or whatever, that median price is a lot higher than what you can actually get. So it's really it gets some tough negotiation waters when it comes to that. And then also like over the years, you have great subscription services like you're talking about the Vault and Vinyl Me Please, but you also have some real crappy ones that basically what they're doing is they're buying up all these indie records that aren't really that good and nobody knows about them for $1, $2, $3 from like liquidators and wholesalers and things like that. And they're basically, people will sign up for $20, $30 a month and they'll just send them a box full of stuff that, not that it's not good, but nobody knows what it is. And so we get a lot of that stuff in that people have been a part of subscription services and stuff like that just doesn't hold its value. Again, not because it's not good, but because no one knows what it is. And so that stuff, sometimes it's $1, $2, $3, $5, even though it's a modern record, nobody knows what it is. So we're, 2 years ago, it was a lot different. Any records that we got in that were modern, it was like, you could sell them for decent money. But now as we're seeing the market ebb and flow, and then also like you have the collectors that are getting deeper in it. So they're trading in their reissues to get original press stuff. And so all in all, it's really good for the community. It's really good that things are coming back and we're able to recycle some of these records, especially the original press stuff. I have absolutely no complaints. I think that the market has sustained itself really, really, really well, all things considered. So
now you mentioned reissues, and obviously, as collectors, we tend to want to gravitate towards the original pressings, whatever that is inside us that makes us want to have a 1969 Stooges rather than a current repress. Are you starting to see a shift in that? And I'll give you an example. Blue Note originals used to be, still are quite largely, hundreds of dollars each. Now with Tone Poets and some of the other reissues that Blue Note's doing, is that starting to impact the price of original pressings?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that there was a time in 2020, 2021 that we hit this bananas fever dream of jazz collectors, and like stuff was going on eBay for stupid prices. People were spending them stimulus checks and they didn't care. So I think that happened, and at that time it seemed like original jazz pressings were at an all-time high. But now you've gotten so many people that were buying those Tone Poets and the classic series and all that stuff, and they're like, okay, I've gotten this stuff, now I want to start getting into original pressing stuff. So I don't think the type of collectors that want first pressings, the reissues aren't impacting them. You know what I mean? They don't care if there's a reissue, and some people collect both because the Tone Poets sound great and the analog production stuff sounds amazing, and like all these really good quality pressings that they're putting out, people still will buy that and the original press. So that's kind of like your play copy. And if you want to impress some friends, you can throw on the original. But I don't think the reissues. I think it's two totally separate types of collectors. Because you have the collectors, they don't care if it's a first pressing, they just want the music. And then you have the collectors that they're dying for that. They gotta have the plastolite P and the deep groove and the circle R and everything. And so those are not the people that they're going to settle for a Tone Poet. You know what I mean? So I don't think it.
What you're saying is the Tone Poets are actually becoming a bit of a gateway into the OGs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that it's crazy, like, to be a jazz collector now versus being a jazz collector 6 or 7 years ago. Like, the market has changed so much because, I mean, even back then, I mean, I remember buying Blue Notes for relatively cheap 10 years ago. And then the market has gone up a lot. And then also just the availability of really good quality pressings. And so I think a lot of people that have gotten into vinyl have gravitated towards jazz. And then they have so many great options for really good jazz records and just available everywhere that once they go deeper down the rabbit hole, if they do get to the place where they're going for original pressings, I don't think that the reissues are making any impact at all. If not making them worth more.
Billy, I saw you nodding. It sounds like you've got a perspective here, yeah?
Oh, it's just I think it's interesting how Dillon just mentioned a couple of times, like, oh, a decade ago you could do this, or a decade ago you could do that, and a decade ago was 2014, and it's wild how much it's changed and how much, frankly, the pandemic impacted the way in which people looked at vinyl as both an experience but also as a commodity. Like, I mean, look, I've been tasked with growing the format at the Warner Music Group from 2008 to the present, right? So like one of my main jobs is what's the format doing? How can we do more of it? How's it developing? What's happening, right? So to watch the rises and rises, even though plateau years, but also really extensive growth years, and get to this place where we're making, in a lot of respects, better records than were made originally. The care that's taken with the way the cuts are happening, the way the galvanic process is going on, the pressing plants that are being used to make these records. I think Tone Poets are great examples. I think Rhino Hi-Fis are doing great work. Craft small batch stuff is doing great. Analog Productions. Again, we have all these records that are being produced by these labels and these plants. And in a lot of respects, in a lot of ways, they were recorded at a time when the technology to play it back wasn't to the optimal level it could be. And that has developed over the 50, 60 years, 70 years now. Wait, oh my God, is it more than that? LP started in what, 45?
Something like that.
Something like that. So a long time. But now you not only have you improved some of the pressings themselves, just the music that's in the groove, but also the machines that we have to play them back are better than they ever were. So while and this is me, right? Like I love jazz records, but if it's an OG press, fine. If it's a great sounding press from whenever, fine. But I love Tone Poets because I have this thing that I can depend on, right? Like when you see it, like I know what I'm getting. I'm not going to be disappointed. I'm not going to feel like the press isn't good. I'm not going to grab it and touch it and be like, oh, what happened? It's bad, right? Like you have something to depend on, which you cannot do with original pressings simply because unless, Dylan, you spend all of your life play testing every single record all the way through, visual inspection does not tell the tale, right? And so it's hard to find things that are literally so clean and pristine and perfect that you want, right? I want to put a tone arm down on a record, and I don't want to hear the record. I want to hear the music that's on that record. So I now, in this modern age that we live in, this crazy time, I can do that. I can find great original copies as well. Don't get me wrong. Like, I was talking to a buddy of mine that runs a record store up in a few miles from me, Hudson Valley Vinyl, about Flower Traveling Band Satori record that he sold me. His copy, near mint copy from '73 or whatever, Japanese Psych, fantastic record, amazing record. Dylan's probably gonna go pull his copy right now. He's been, yeah. See, there you go, exactly. And that record, I can't improve that record because the copy that I have found is so perfect. But that is a rare occurrence where you can find those records. I mean, I know that Dylan, it's not as rare for Dylan because he's in it and digging all the time, but for someone that isn't running a record shop like myself and has this other job that he has to maintain and all the things that go along with that. I can't spend all my time digging, so I have to like be really smart about how am I looking at my collecting? How am I looking at what I'm filling in for those holes that I feel I have a hole in, while I'm still on the hunt for the things that, oh yeah, I need to get a good copy of that record because I don't have it yet. Or as an example, this year I finally got a really clean white label promo of this Tom Waits record. All the Asylum records, this is the last one. Everything else I have, white labels, but I wanted all of them, right? So finally, you find one. You wait and you find and you look and okay, there we go. Got it. Finally, I'm good. I can take that off the board, right? But like all the anti reissues of all the Tom Waits records are fantastic records. The reissue series that Rhino did when the catalog was still with us through Electro Asylum, those 2014 era represses were beautifully sounding records. They're really gorgeous records. So it's like I'm enamored with the idea of having OG Blue Note records or OG Atlantic Jazz records or OG Impulse records. The idea of it is very romantic and it's very emotional. But the reality is, like, for someone like me who doesn't dedicate as much time as someone like Dylan does to like the hunt, I just want a record that sounds great. I want to be able to take it out of the jacket, put it on, and be like, this record sounds so good, I'm just going to sit here and listen to it.
From my perspective, and again, speaking from my personal collection, I've changed my habits in 2024. I used to be very focused on OG copies, and I always liked the lifetime copies, right? Like this record was actually made when Hendrix was alive. To me, it's
totally.
Like, it's like a historical kind of, like I'm holding a piece of history. That being said, the track records that Hendrix made are probably some of the worst sounding of his career, to my ears anyway. And, so I may have one to hold, but then I also have next to it an Experience Hendrix reissue that to my ears and my system sounds a lot better anyway. But then I'll get something like Blue Notes. I used to only buy a handful of Blue Notes because that's all I could afford. the OGs, the really, and nice
Yeah.
sounding ones. There's a lot of beat up ones that, a lot of parties have been had with those records. But, when Tone Poets kind of opened the door for me to be able to afford those Hank Mobleys that I could
Right.
never buy.
Oh, 100%.
And
I mean, because
so
also, Nate, think about how few records were pressed originally on those titles. I mean, this is the thing this is what I find to be really interesting just about like pressing quantities. Dylan mentioning like some of these newer records just being overproduced, right? It's so funny because it's all a sliver of what was pressed in the heyday of the format. Sliver. Almost nothing. Like there's just a handful of records that are being produced at that same level that they were produced at when they were actually the original format. But when you go all the way back to the late 50s and they're making jazz records, those like true first pressings of those records, that was nothing. A couple thousand, maybe, maybe, right? Probably in the hundreds on quite a lot of them. And so like thinking about like which one of those is the real true OG, like true OG. It's almost like you get into the crazy argument about hot stampers and all that kind of shit, which I really don't want to go down that sort of alley in this discussion at all. But you know, how you find an OG that truly fits every single aspect of what OG should mean. Fuck, man, that's impossible. I'm sorry, but like, we're too far away from it at this point. It's like, oh my god, the stories that people tell about the own records that they have. Like, who? I don't know, man. Myth.
Well, that's why I have to have someone like a Dylan, or I've got a few other
No,
folks
100%. I mean,
who run
totally.
shops. It's like a doctor. I need this. Can you help me find
No,
this?
100%. I mean, that's why, like, again, I go to Chris up at Hudson Valley Vinyl and I say, I'm looking for this. Can you help me? And then I just wait, and then he does it. It's like I need the professional to dig into this because I don't have it, man. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. I just want the record to play it. I just want to play the record.
So, Dylan, I'm curious. I see your body language twisting in this conversation here.
So, a couple things. First of all, most importantly of all, it takes all types to make it go around. You know what I mean? Everybody, some people, they don't give a crap what pressing it is, as long as they can put it on their Crosley and jam it.
That's right.
They don't care. And some people that have really nice systems, they don't want to hear any crackle. And the odds of you find an original Blue Note with no crackle is very slim. That being said, it's not impossible to find them. It's very, very difficult, but that's kind of part of the fun, Anybody who's like a madman and crazy about Blue Notes, like in Prestige, those original RVGs, all that.
Sure. Yeah.
They have such a specific punch to them that can't be replicated by a reissue. Even though the reissue probably technically sounds better on a lot of them. Like a lot of these I'll have like the Analog Productions reissue of it, and then I'll have an original. And it depends on what I want to hear, but these guys will have like these really expensive mono cartridges and all this equipment, and there's just the sound that can't be replicated. It's just like really, really cool. So anyways, it's not impossible to find them, but for somebody who's not a psychopath, it might be a very, very difficult. So, a psychopath.
I'm sorry, Dylan. Just let me get this straight. So what you're saying is that you're a psychopath.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
But I'll show some of these. But I got a stack right here. These are almost all Blue Notes that I just got from that Voice of America collection that most of them I don't think have ever been played, and they're very real deal first pressings. So, it's the stuff like that keeps it exciting. I think not everybody has access to records like I do, which I'm very fortunate. But a lot of people, record collectors, are known to be very, for lack of a better term, very anal people. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. So
I was going to say very specific people, but yeah, I like your description.
Particular. They're particular.
Particular.
Okay? Cut the anal out. Particular. They're particular folks, and some of them can be, some of them aren't, but it depends. What's more healthy? Somebody who just wants to hear the music, or they have to have that first pressing? It depends on who you ask. But it takes all of us to make the world go round. I'm happy there's people buying tone poets. I'm happy there's people buying first pressings. It depends on why you collect records and what you like about it. Some people want to hold a piece of history. I'm one of those people. I like to hold something that's, Led Zeppelin 1 test pressing, that like the history behind that is incredible. But I also love the Zeppelin 1 classic record pressings, and they sound incredible too. So it just depends. Sometimes if I want to show off my system, or if I really want to experience it, I want to have the best possible sounding copy, which 9 times out of 10 is not an original, unless it's a Mint RL or whatever. There's that's
And by the way, this conversation is not about what's better or what's worse. Everyone's got their preferences, but I think maybe speaking to the evolution of record collecting, because I'm finding my tastes, not just in music, but also in the way I listen, is changing. One of the things that happened in 2024 is I got a really nice stereo system. I got tubes. And I've got a new turntable, and that totally changed the way I listen to records. And I think, Dillon, I may have told you this before. Now I've got my upstairs system and my downstairs system, because the upstairs system with the tubes, it brings out everything of the record, the good and the bad. So I could listen to, tone poet. I could listen to all sorts of, fantastic music upstairs. But if I put on something like the Saints or the Germs, it brings out all those flaws as well. And it's a little bit confronting listening to Darby crash on a tube system. So I need to have that in a different system. It's a different way of listening to records that I found myself doing. So the evolution of the preferences of the pressings is not lost on me.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that aspect of going to full analog chain, going to tube, and I have another coworker that ended up getting a little tiny tube amp for a little tiny studio apartment in New York, and she found that she had to re-listen to all of her records because they sounded different enough that she had to get familiar with them through the tubes. And then during pandemic, she went through a process of listening to all her records alphabetically, start to finish, because she had this new tube amp, and it was this experience of all these things are basically, they're new to me again. And I think that you're definitely touching on that. It's interesting, collecting as this planned and documented and enumerated process that is being shoved in your face sort of every day when you're on social networks. Like, here are the 5 reasons why you should collect vinyl, and one of them is always this: it sounds better. And I always kind of wince at that. It's like it's not that. It's that it's a sound that you end up preferring because it's human. I mean, this is how I think about it myself. And again, this, to Dillon's point earlier, takes everybody to make this work. And I think that is it a better sound? Is it technically a better sound? Is it emotionally a better sound? It's like, hey man, it's whatever you like. And that's the thing I like about it, is that you get to interact with this piece of art in a way that you most want to. Just like your point about, that is kind of jarring to listen to a Germs record through a tube amp. Maybe that should be played on a system that's not quite so illuminating, right? And by the way,
or I need to get used to it.
No, totally.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's also this aspect of one of the things we talk about internally at the company is, the way in which we talk about making records is, we want to make every record to the best that we can possibly do it. But that means that the way you make an audiophile record isn't the same way that you make a punk rock record. There are things that you do that are different. You still get the result that you want in the end, right? You're still trying to make a great sounding, looking record, flat, centered, all that kind of shit. But it is a different process between those two poles, and they should be different. And that's, I think, if you look at sort of the modern business, I think the thing that's different about what's happened over the last, say, 20 years compared to OG back in the day, 50s, 60s, 70s, they made all those records back then, everything was made the same way. It was a production process, right? You had guys that were on staff that cut those records. You had people on staff that actually did the galvanics. You had all your own people on staff doing collation and shipping and all that stuff. And now you literally have artisans that are doing every single step.
Mhm.
So the way in which it's even made now is also very different. Which again, I think it does bring out a different sort of sound profile than what it would be originally. But I think, Dylan, that's one of the reasons why we talk about like there's a punch to them, that exists in those OG copies. I think that there's a reason like that's something that goes along those lines of like Rudy Van Gelder knew how to mic that studio and he knew exactly where these people needed to be. And there aren't many Rudy Van Gelders. They're I mean, you could also say that like about a lot of producers, by the way. Like, man, they just got a sound out of that band that you couldn't get any other way. Wow, they were instrumental, but there's so few people back then that were like that. It was just like this was a job. You had engineers and scientists making these products, making these records, and now it's literally like individual bespoke mastering engineers and cutting engineers and guys like Dorn that runs the playing department at RTI that's like, hey man, this is my thing. This is what I do, Anyway,
Well,
I just
so,
rambled for a long time. I apologize.
so let me ask you, because from my understanding, if you go back to the '70s, a lot of the devices that people were listening to records on were not as sophisticated as a lot of what we have today. And so they had to have those records in that particular bandwidth, like the RIAA curve and everything,
Yeah,
which
sure.
is one of the reasons why that Led Zeppelin II Robert Ludwig stuck out so much is because it probably would have been considered, like a hi-fi record that couldn't be played on the average equipment of the day. If that's correct, and let me know if it isn't, but I mean, are we starting to see kind of a fragmentation of the way that records are produced, for high end and low end?
I don't necessarily think that it's necessarily fragmentation because all the people that are doing those jobs, all those cutting engineers, all those mastering engineers, still understand what that curve is and still have to actually master to that because of the essentially. And again, forgive me if I say this. I'm sure someone's going to put comments in this and say like that guy's an idiot, doesn't know what he's talking about. But there is something about like the hertz levels, top and bottom, that you can only get so much on vinyls. Some part of it has to change. That's why when they talk about high res digital stream or high res audio in like say SACDs, a lot of people say like I like that more because you get the full. It's not clipped.
Right.
But the thing is that what gets clipped is the things that literally you cannot hear if you're a human being. And so I think that there's definitely something about that is still absolutely consistent. There's still like laws of physics that dictate what can be cut and how it can be cut onto a side. Because you still have the fact that you've only got so much space. And that means so much time. And that means there's a volume level that you have to deal with. And there has to be the idea of if you can stay away from the inside groove as much as possible with the loudest tracks, you have less chance of having tracking errors. And when you think about how microscopic the end of that stylus is that's down in that groove, like you have to have mad scientists that know exactly what they're doing that adhere to those principles. So I don't think you're seeing anything that's like jumping way outside of that. I think that you have to adhere to that. It's just physics.
Dylan, I know you get records pressed quite a bit for the Noble Records label. What sort of questions or what sort of approach do you have when it comes to creating some of these releases?
So, first of all, to speak a little bit about what you were saying before, back in the day, something we had to remember is that just because people had records doesn't mean they're a record collector. Most of them, they had records because that's the only way they could hear it. So
That was entertainment, man. That's what you
yeah.
had. Yeah.
So they're not a bunch of nerds sitting around arguing about matrix numbers. You know what I mean? They don't care. And so their job when they're mastering it is to master it in a way that these records aren't going to get returned. And so it couldn't be crazy. And then you started getting audiophile records like, in the late 70s and stuff like that for these people that were spending as much as they would spend on a new Corvette on a sound system, which is insane. But back in the 70s, and then so that was the record collectors of the time. And then but most people were not record collectors. They just had records because they wanted to hear music. So, anyways, but to
That's a really good point, by the way, Dylan. I mean, you're right. Like, you can't miss that, right? Like, that's because that's how you were entertained, because that was all you had. You had music that you could play on your record player with your friends,
yeah,
or you
like
could go
now,
out.
if you have records, it's a choice. You know,
Oh, 100. Oh
you
no,
can know.
100%. I
Yeah,
say
you
that.
see somebody that has records like this in their house, you can make some assumptions. You know, but back then, that's just
Yeah.
But you're saying about records that we get pressed. Yeah, I mean, so the questions people are asking are, I kind of envy the days before the whole MoFi scandal, because everyone's like, I want to know the chain. Where did this come from? Did anybody fart during the mastering session? And everybody wants to know every single, which is fine. And I'm completely transparent about that, by the way. But we're pressing like really obscure stuff. A lot of those tapes don't exist anymore. Some of them do. So we did one at QRP, and we got it's straight from the master tapes, all analog AAA. That was really hard and expensive to do, but it's an audiophile record. That's an obscure record. It shouldn't exist. Like an obscure rock record like this, it sounds way better than the original did. But then, like, a couple other ones that we did, we had to do needle drop because the tapes didn't exist. So that's one big thing people ask. Even though they're mastered so well and they sound so good, they would never know. So, but they are still asking because
Right.
nerds. But I'm joking a little bit. But so people are asking a lot about that. But also, I mean, the quality is a big deal. People that are deep enough into collecting to want these rare obscure records, they do care that they're going to sound good, because so many labels before me kind of ruined it for people, and they just pumped out these garbage sounding glorified bootlegs of stuff. And so now I think labels are getting held a little bit more accountable for how they handle the music. And also, like, to me, when we license a record, like, it might be the last time it's put on vinyl, but I mean, I might be giving this thing its last life. So I want to handle this stuff with the utmost respect, and I want it to be presented in the best possible way. So, but that's just that's just me. So that, I guess, that's what people ask, just about like where it's all coming from and all that stuff. That's a lot more important than it seemed to have been 3 years ago. So,
And to on top of that, I think that the one difference that it is important to call out is the awareness of the people that are engaged in buying and collecting records. Not the awareness of like who the producer is, or who the guitarist is, or who is the lead singer originally in this band that's changed now to this or whatever. But it's, where was this pressed? Who cut the record? Like, I'm sorry, when I was 18, 17, 16 years old, I didn't give a shit about who cut the record. I didn't care what plant that was in a part of the Warner system pressed the record. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I think that is all one of the side effects of Discogs. Like, if you were just to like collect records, the minutia that you can now easily find at your fingertips is extraordinary compared to what it used to be. And so I think that whole idea, I mean, just like Dylan saying, like, you didn't collect records before. This is like you had records because you wanted to play music. The same thing could be said about like the buyer today knows way too much for their own good, as far as I'm concerned. Like, do you really need to know who cut the record? I mean, I think it's great, if there's a particularly fantastic job done and you're like, oh my God, man, you made that thing really hum. That's fantastic, right? But I just want it to sound good. I just want it to sound
well,
good.
to be the devil's advocate, like, people like Bernie Grumman's a freaking rock star. Like, he deserves for people to be like,
100%.
but different strokes, I guess. But
No,
to
no, no.
your
I'm not saying that because I want to negate the expertise of
yeah,
people that have actually done amazing work over the years. I'm not saying that
yeah,
at all. What I'm saying is, um, if it's your gig that you want to know that about your records, I think that's awesome to find it out. What I'm saying is that it's not imperative for most people that
yeah,
are in the collector space to know that detail.
right.
But that's the modern difference. That's the age now that we're in, which is everybody knows it because
Well,
it can be known.
Well, most people don't, like you said, most people don't care. But you got these Steve Hoffman forum, keyboard warriors that are a little bit tough to be around at the shop. You know what I mean? But
Sure, yeah.
but they're real particular folks, and sometimes the argument can be made like, do you even like the music? Or I mean, but I'm just thankful people are buying records. We'll just draw the line there.
No, look, 100%, 100%. Look, it takes all shapes and forms, my friends.
I would imagine that people like to have that information. I kind of like to have that information. Oh, that was mastered by Kevin Gray. Good to know. If it was mastered by, Joe Boggs, it probably still wouldn't prevent me from buying it. Right? Like,
if it's a record that you want,
yeah,
it's not going to change your mind.
Right. Hey, speaking of which, Dylan, when's the last time you kicked someone out of your shop?
Oh, that's a great question.
That is a great question. Let's talk about the next to last time. The last time I'd rather not talk about. I'll tell you in private. The next to last time, I had this raving lunatic. Did I tell you this story?
No.
This guy came in, and he had a backpack full of records, and it was just the run of the mill classic rock. The best one he had was this Rolling Stones "Let It Bleed" with the poster, and it was a nice U.S. press, whatever. This was couple years ago. We don't kick people out very often. The last person we kicked out was 2 years ago. So anyways, this guy was kind of the funniest one. And he sold me the records. Absolutely no pushback. I gave him a price. Sure. And gave him the cash. He left. This was a Saturday night. Actually, I priced the records and put them out immediately. The next day, somebody came and they bought that, the Let It Bleed. No big deal. And he comes in screaming, shouting, yelling at the top of his lungs that I'd ripped him off, which I didn't. I paid him fair, but he said that he looked on eBay and Let It Bleed was worth at least $500 with the poster. And I don't even remember how much I gave him, but I paid him fair for it, And he wanted either the record back or he wanted $500, and he was not going to leave. And so he's freaking out, yelling, screaming. I'm going to call the police. And I was like, I handed him my phone and said, call the police. Please, call the police. And so I ended up pulling him outside and just telling him, like, hey, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. He came back a few times. We had to get the police involved, and I haven't seen him since. But a little word to shop owners, don't be afraid to call the police. Like, someone starts flipping out, call the police then. Immediately call the police because they're your friends. I guess I just didn't want to waste their time, but I really they had to get involved at some point anyways. But when you're dealing with the public, you're always going to have people. But, there was a guy a couple years ago that had a little bit of a psychotic break in my shop, and it was a bad situation. And we had to kick him out, obviously, but it was just a terrible situation. But when you're dealing with the public, it happens, but it has not happened. We had two guys get in a fist fight one time over a Van Morrison record, which is hilarious, but I had to kick them both out.
Wait. What Van Morrison record?
It was the Veed and Fleece one. It was I don't know why. Well, part of it was in the height of COVID, and one of them was mad because the other one was too close, and they were both wearing masks and gloves, and I guess they already had the gloves on, so they were ready to duke it out. I don't know. So they started pushing and shoving. Somebody
They weren't fighting over the pressing. Like, this is a Santa Maria pressing. No,
I think that both of them wanted the record. And have you ever been in a record store and been in a frenzy and someone reach over you and grab a record that you're looking at? I don't know if you ever had that happen, but it's very, very
bad form.
I've seen it happen, but
that was what happened.
Yeah. Okay.
So the guy pushes the guy. Somebody takes a swing. I had to kick them both out. I was like, listen, I don't care if you fight, but you got to do it in the parking lot. I kicked them out. They both went home. And they both, funny enough, they were wearing masks, so they didn't know who each other was. They both come in the store all the time, and I've seen them both in the store at the same time together, and they don't even know that they got in a fight once. It was hilarious. But anyways, so those are the three times.
So Dylan, wait a second. So you haven't approached them both when they're next to each other with two copies of Veed and Fleece and say, look, here's one for both of you.
No, I don't want to, instigate anything else, but they're both really good guys. It's just, it was a weird
bad moment. It was a bad moment.
I've had it pandemic. Somebody reach over me to grab something I'm looking at, and that is just bad form.
Yeah, that's bad etiquette. Yeah,
but anyways, so those are the only three times it's happened. But other than that, most of the time, I did catch a guy stealing once, but other than that, it really doesn't happen. So
Okay. So let me ask you, Billy. So your role at Warner Music Group is to create strategies to be able to, simply put, sell more records in 2025 than you did in 2024 to grow the market. Is that fair?
Well, I think that that's I find it hard to explain what I do because it's not any one specific thing. So it's not necessarily that, but it's certainly part of that. I try to be the problem solver for things that aren't strictly production based, and the
Mm-hmm.
problem solver for things that aren't specifically marketing or sales based. So I sort of like float sort of in this space. I mean, I have, let's call it my day job, which is I manage a team of people that do retail and platform marketing with record stores. I manage record stores themselves. We have a bunch of direct accounts that fall under my purview. We do all sorts of planning and projections for physical formats, both LP and CD. But sort of what I've done from 2008 to the present is what I try to do is make sure that all of the people that I essentially serve in the center of the Warner Music Group are informed with the things that I pick up from being like in the market of vinyl every day. Because even though a lot of it's work in the music business, there are a very small group of us that are actually in it every day buying records or in shops or talking to shops. Like, so there's this aspect of we're interacting with people all the time, whether it's wholesale accounts or mass merchants or Amazon. Our responsibilities cover a lot of things, but I am also like in the lifestyle of it as well. And
Right.
my job really in the end is what are we doing to benefit the format and the growth of that format? And how do I actually do that in a way that keeps my team informed of things that are changing, pressures, negatives that might be coming up, bad narratives. I mean, earlier this last year, you probably saw the story that came out that said finals down 33 points in America. I got involved very quickly with a group that the Warner Music Group is a part of called the Vinyl Alliance. I'm a board advisor of that group to push back against that story and say, that's not correct. You need to actually tie into Illuminate, understand what it was that was being broadcast. Let's change that narrative. So there's that sort of thing too. So an advocate, a voice, hopefully something that is sensible and easily explained. I don't know. It's hard to make an emotional thing work in a business context, but that's essentially what I'm trying to negotiate and interpret, I suppose, on a regular basis.
But by the way, good job on that, because I remember that I wake up in Australia and half the US day is already gone. And when I checked my phone, already the retorts were out by midday or
Oh
something.
yeah,
like
we weren't fucking around, man.
Yeah. Someone jumped on that hand grenade.
And
Quick.
by the way, I just want to be clear, just in case anyone that was involved in that and wrote it and talked about it, it's like, if that was the real story, we would say, yeah, that here's the reason why, right? Like, I'm not here to I'm not making a false narrative. I'm saying like, let's just be accurate in the way we talk about it, which is, again, this is one of the things my big pushbacks about just the way, like the 5 reasons why you collect vinyl. It's like, I want to just punch people in the face and like, there's one reason to collect vinyl. It's because you fucking love the records. It's because you love music. It's because it's vital to your life. It makes a difference in your experience every day. Like, buy records because it makes your life better, man. Anything else is cream on the cake, babe. Like, just do it because you like the records. But anyway, so thank you, Nate. I appreciate you saying that.
No worries. So the question I was going to get to is
Yeah.
what are you doing different in 2025? What are you doing different going forward than you did in the past? How is the vinyl market going to grow? How do you see it evolving, and what sort of things are you positioning for it?
Yeah. Look, the things that kept the vinyl market from growing in the past were, certainly if we would go all the way back to 2008, it was presses to press records, titles to press, and storefronts to sell. You were limited in all 3 aspects. And I'll just talk about the U.S., but really when you look at this market, especially as it concerns sort of the physical sales of things, every market is essentially the same thing. Every market has a structure where there's independent retail, there are chains, there are mass merchants, there's .coms. This is relevant for any market. And some developing markets still might be having those three challenges, to be quite honest. There's a lot of pressing plants going into sort of those tertiary territories at this point now, the smaller places, Lithuania. I know Australia's got one or two plants now. I think one for sure, maybe two. I think New Zealand's now has Suitcase Records in New Zealand that's opened up. And that's happening a lot. So if those are the three things that were limiting the market in 2008, and by 2019 those were all gone. None of those were problems anymore. None of those were limiters to the growth of the format. What you needed was more buyers. What you needed was a bigger audience that wanted to adopt, right? So in my view, two things happened. And this is not a controversial, I think, statement, but I think some people might think I'm putting too much weight on one instead of on another. And the first is whatever his tag is, Dogface 420, got on that skateboard, drinking his ocean spray to Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. That fucking changed records for millennials and Gen Z specifically. They put it in a way and in a context where that music did something to the adoption of the music, and that music being on vinyl, and that music being, I mean, I know that it wasn't played on vinyl, by the way, but because it's such a huge record, Rumors is such a huge record in our DNA, sort of as human beings in a way, right? And then the other second thing is pandemic. And to Dylan's point earlier, like there was a lot of extra money floating around during pandemic, and a lot of people didn't know what to do with it, and they bought record players and they bought records. And that wasn't just, old folks like me. That was a lot of young people. And those young people have fueled the growth of the format from the beginning of pandemic through the present. Because if you look at like demographically who the biggest group of buyers of vinyl is today, it's the two youngest demographic as opposed to the two oldest, which is flipped. Because it used to be, like 35 to 45 and 45 to 55. Those two were the biggest. And then basically like, 18 to 24 and 25 to 34, whatever those two are. And now that's flipped. Those two younger generations are the two that are actually leading the charge buying the format at this point. And so I think that in 2025, what we have to do is say to ourselves, and I'm not saying, again, like I can share these ideas with the people I work with, whether or not people believe it or want to do it or go along with it. That's, I lead a horse to water as it is. But we have to ensure that the next generation actually sees it as this thing that is rewarding and cool and valuable and sort of life affirming. And then you get the next generation. That means you're growing your audience, because that's what has to happen now. I mean, Dylan mentioned that his label finds really obscure records to produce. I think that's super vital. I think that you have to have all that really, really, really deep niche stuff going on. But there aren't a whole lot of major catalogs or titles to be added to the mix at this point. If you can think of like an important record that was a chart topper over the golden years of vinyl, it's likely in print available one way or the other today, right? Not just used copies, plethora of, but just reissues, repressings, anniversary editions, bonus content versions, alternate versions. There's a lot of that content that exists now. So it's about finding buyers in 2025. It's about making sure that you're making records for the music that you're releasing, and especially that music that is attracted to the younger generations that we have that are coming up, and making sure that we're putting it in their hands.
Okay.
I mean, if we don't do that, then there's a continuity break that occurs, right? And I say this often to people that I work with and people, and in the hallway and with the team, and it's like, and even the way I'm talking now definitively, like I know what I'm fucking talking about. Like, we're all in the dark, man. Like we think we know what we're doing, and we believe we're headed in the right direction and we're making the right decisions, but we know less than we think, and we forget more than we know, and
Well,
you
you
know
can't control a guy that starts doing this viral video that just kind of comes out of left field. That's very interesting. You guys, I'm sure you have data that shows this trajectory almost to the day that video.
I mean,
became viral.
you definitely see it on the streaming side, obviously, because that's where it mostly impacted. But I'm just
Right.
saying, like it did something for those younger generations around that era of music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing I wanted to ask Dylan about. What what is the makeup of the younger generations that are coming into your shop, and what are they buying, especially on the used side?
Well, there. I mean, they're all there. There's some different ones, man. I mean, there's a lot of them buy vinyl. Some of them are buying cassettes, and I think like
Yeah,
I'm sure the skateboard guy. I never thought of that. That's a really interesting point. Something I always thought, which is just a speculation, was that a couple things happened. First was, Stranger Things hit this nostalgic. And this was like all during 2020. Everybody watched it. And there's, the Metallica scene and the Kate Bush and all that stuff. It hit this really nostalgic vein for older people. And then younger people, like, records are magic. Like, you're on like, imagine if you grew up with a smartphone, like, how's this sound coming out? And I think that the younger generation is like, they long for, uh, something you can hold, because I mean, music comes out of their phones. So that's something I've seen with the younger generation. I think that that tangibility and analog side of it is like magical to them because it's life coming out of this, the speakers. So, but yeah, as far as the youth side goes, I see kids that were like me. Like I always would find either a reissue or a beater copy of something, and then I would hope to upgrade down the road. And so, kids that are on a limited budget, they surf the dollar bin, and we have a $3 bin and a $5 bin, and then some of them, have money and they come in and buy Mac Miller or whatever, the new records that are coming out. Uh, a lot of them are like trying to build their collection and get the essentials and things like that too. So it just depends on like, you know, teenage girls come in and some of them gravitate towards, Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift and whatever. And then the teenage boys come in and a lot of times they're getting metal or they're getting punk or they're getting hip hop or whatever. And so it's really like well rounded. Some of them are super cool and they'll be like, "Hey, what would you buy if you were me?" And they'll ask for a recommendation, and then
sure.
I'll try not to ruin their life with a crazy record that'll,
Or
But
you will ruin their life, and that's good.
yeah. Well, I had a kid come in. This is worth telling. He bought a Tool record, and he was like, and he brought it home, and his mom brought him back and said, "This record, I can't remember which one it was. It was one. I think it was Undertow. It was Undertow." And she's like, "This record looks evil. Does this have any curse words in it?" And he's standing behind her going, and I was like, "Not a one, clean as a whistle." And he's like,
You just made
so,
a friend for life, is what you did right there, buddy.
yeah, man. But it was. I
Yeah.
just remember being that kid and like, And so, anyways, a lot of it. I'm not so old that I don't remember what it was like. When I was a teenager in the early 2000s, and I was wearing AC/DC and Led Zeppelin shirts, and these old turds were saying, "You don't even know what that music
Right.
is. You're not
Name
old
five
enough." So,
songs. Yeah, totally.
so
Yeah.
I love seeing it come back around in the cycles and all that stuff.
Well, one thing and we just had some of the guys from King Gizzard on the show.
Oh, cool.
They're starting to pare back the variants. That I mean, used to King Gizzard come out and there's like 4 variants, then 6 variants, then it came like 10 or 12. It became pretty. If you're a King Gizzard
Crazy.
fan, a lot of your money was going to records. They've now decided to kind of pare that back. And their last release, I think there was 2. From your perspective, are you seeing a change in the approach to different vinyl variants for new releases? Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VinylGuide10. Hey there, audiophiles. If you're seeking stylish furniture to showcase your stereo and record collection, well, look no further than SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Sidetracked Workshop designs extraordinarily elegant record cabinets and consoles that add sophistication and panache to your music hobby. Handcrafted in the good old USA in the vinyl-loving city of Portland, Oregon, Sidetracked Workshop's designs are a music lover's dream. Made with real walnut veneered wood and brass accents, these gorgeous designs add class and taste to the record room and ship fully assembled and ready to enjoy. Just check out the designs for yourself at SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Look, you spend thousands of dollars on records. Don't keep them in a crate, and don't risk your records on those feeble wooden pegs from IKEA. Your music deserves the dignity of Sidetracked Workshop. That's SidetrackedWorkshop.com. Elegant solutions for the vinyl lifestyle. From your perspective, are you seeing a change in the approach to different vinyl variants for new releases?
Me? I don't know. I think so. I mean, I think that that's probably smart of the Gizzard guys. I think that people, they went nuts for a little bit, and they were like, I got to get one of each. Like, I bought a collection recently, and the guy had a bunch of like metal stuff and stuff like that, and he would have 6 copies of the same record because he'd go on their website and one of each kind. And I think people are getting burned out on it, and they don't have that monopoly money anymore, and they just want to buy one. So you might have the indie record store exclusive, the website exclusive, and then a black vinyl, and that's it. And I think that's a lot more fun that way. I think that when you go on and you're looking up a Ghost record and there's 75 different colors, and that's no exaggeration. Like some of those Ghosts, oh man, it's crazy. But it would make sense to me that they probably at some point got stuck with a lot of something. You know what I mean? Because and everybody does, but I think that at a certain point, people were buying records so fast, everything was selling out. All the tone poets are selling out. Every variation was selling out. The record pressing plants were running at 110%, and it was just madness. And then at a certain point, everything kind of slowed down, but the pressing plants kept pumping them out just as fast. And then at some point, they tried to realize, like, okay, we're getting stuck with a lot of stuff. And so then, like, this past year, I've seen so many websites do crazy deals, like even Amazon slashing the prices of tone poets and things like that, because there's such a great quantity of stuff, and the market, it's not that there's less people in it, it's just like they're not throwing quite as much money at things like they used to, because for a couple of years it was madness. It was crazy. Our first year,
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
We opened in 2019, at the end of 2019. And then we shut down for COVID, and I was like, man, it was fun while it lasted. I guess I'm not going to have a record store. And then we hung on barely by the skin of my teeth. And then when we opened back up, it was nuts. That whole year was nuts. It was great. But a great climate to build a business in. But I'm very thankful for that aspect of it. But it definitely, I think it has changed a lot. And there was such a FOMO behind, like, if I don't buy this record now, it's going to skyrocket. And people were on Discogs buying those variants for high money. And I think people have been in it long enough to where, like, okay, maybe I'll just wait. And then we'll see what happens. And then, so people are getting smarter, and the FOMO is drying up, which is, I think it's a good thing. So anyways, I think that we're going into a really healthy side of record collecting that is sustainable. and predictable. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah. Billy, your thoughts on
I
variants? Is
mean,
that something we'll still be seeing? Yeah.
I think we will for some things. Yes, I think that um, it's been introduced. It is an effective way to really maximize sort of heat and demand on a record, especially in week one, when everyone wants, a number one on the chart. They want to use every viable means in order to do that. And I think that for big records that you're going to put everywhere in a market, I think you're still going to see a lot of variance. I honestly think I hope we are anyway. We're trying to stay away from the, you know, 25 variant sort of thing. We've done that for a few records over the years, and it truly is. It's a nightmare for managing inventory. It's a nightmare, especially if, to Dylan, you just mentioned, if it doesn't go as well as you hope. There's a whole lot of stuff that is hard to move after that fact. Um, but I think that as far as a method to sort of put a record in a segment of the market that you believe is going to most benefit that record, variants are really effective to do that. So whether or not, by the way, that's a record that seems perfectly suited for Target or perfectly suited for Walmart or a great independent record, there are records that fit into all those spaces. And so I think that there are viable marketing avenues. Now, if any of us do that and then don't tell anybody really about it and don't really push that onto socials and into advertising and sort of make people aware, then shame on us for having done it. But I think that in and of itself, it's not a bad way in which to actually maximize yourself and your footprint in a market. But I agree that there is definitely a level that, like, okay, come now,
Yeah.
let's pull back a bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, we also have to be very clear just about, what does all this mean from a long-term sustainability standpoint? Like, I want people to connect to artists and their music in all the ways they can. And there are pro and con arguments for consuming music in whatever way it's consumed. So I want them to do it in a way that is most valuable to them for the money that they've spent, for the time that they've spent. So, us being better at doing that on the label, the distro, the rep owner side is only going to benefit the entire format and the entire marketplace itself.
So in the last several years, I've also seen an influx of box sets, and I can't even count how many I got right now, and they just take up so much room. But I mean, there's so much interesting material in there. I still love box sets. To me, it feels like it's slowed down a bit. I don't know if that's just me, but
No, it has. I mean,
yeah, okay.
Post-pandemic, a lot of things have slowed down. Yes, I mean, look, people don't have a lot of extra. I mean, if we just look at inflationary pressure, that is global at this point, right? The U.S. hasn't been hit as bad as the rest of the world, but we're still dealing with higher than prices that we were used to in our lives, right? Prices go up. That's what happens over time. It's just that we're so used to having near zero interest rates and very, very low inflation that having even a little tiny spike is putting pressure on a lot of people. And while I know earlier I said that when economic times are tough, usually entertainment's fine. But what that means, though, is that someone might be buying a record, not three records, right?
Right.
And depending on what that price is in the bin, to Dylan's point about the wholesale prices on some of the records that they have that they need to sell, it's pretty tough to compete in a market when you're at that disadvantaged place. So I think that all those things are things that you must keep these attributes in your mind when you're thinking about what your strategy is and how you're going to go to market. And I think that as long as, and I say this to lots of people, so if you've heard me say it in different contexts, I apologize for repeating myself, but I think that it is the value proposition in the end of what a vinyl record brings you. And by the way, a CD and a cassette do the same thing. Like when you look at what you're getting for the packaging, what you're getting for everything that's included, for the price that you're paying and how much you can actually enjoy that music and interact with it and that tactile real life experience, there's still a fantastic value proposition in the format. And that's our job. Our job is to maintain that value proposition. If we do that, we're all going to be absolutely good. We're going to be golden. Things are going to keep going on. You're going to connect the next generation. You're going to sell more records to more kids. They're going to get turned on to collections and find crazy niche, deep records and add them and be bananas people and psychos and weirdos and all the things that we want people to be that are into music so heavily that you can't breathe if you don't have a record on or something, you know.
What do you think is going to be the impact now that record production, the plants are starting to normalize, it's starting to kind of get back to normal, I believe. There's also been investment in other plants and additional shifts. Sure. What do you think is going to be the impact on the vinyl industry when that starts to, or as that becomes more kind of 9 to 5, more predictable?
Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. It already is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, the only, let's call it disequilibrium that exists is just between where the capacity exists on continents and the demand that's on those continents to match. And that's it. But there you can get a record made anywhere as almost as quick as you need it made. So any press that comes out, any story you read where it's like, oh, I can't get a record made, like someone's not being told something or someone's just full of shit. It's one of the two. Because there isn't some backlog. There isn't some, oh my God. I mean, not to say that there aren't still delays. I mean, there are still some print and paper delays based on sort of where you are, what continent you're in. You might find that some weight of paper is available in some continents and not in others, or some sort of attributes of papers and board stock. But, getting records pressed, there isn't a backlog.
Okay.
And I mean, Dillon,
jackets for me, jackets have been taking a lot longer than the LPs. Most plants, they're like, hey, we'll make you a record right now. We'll do it today. If they have the stampers and everything, I mean, like, most of them, I won't even know I'm getting test pressings, and they'll just show up, and I'm like, wow, that was fast. So, like, as far as the pressing of the record, that's not taking much time. But making a jacket, and when I say it takes a lot of time, like maybe 2 months, but once it's there and it's landed, the big holdup for my label is me. Like I procrastinate something, or because I design everything. I do the artwork, I do all the booklets and all that stuff. So, for me, I'm running a billion different things and I work on it when I want to. So that's kind of my holdup. But really, if you were on it and you had the right plant, you could get a record out in a few months if you really wanted to. So it's not always been that way.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, because capacity came online in the U.S. that wasn't there previously, you've got more capacity available in the U.S., which is great. You also have, frankly, you have the Paramount pressing that's up in Denver that's run by Dave Rawlings and Gary Sahlstrom. High quality plant that's online making records now. You've got QRP making high quality records. You've got the Fidelity record pressing plant in Oxnard now that's making MoFi records and others. You've got RTI in California, long-term, high-quality plant. So, like in the U.S., you have 4 of the best plants in the world, and 2 of them are new, right?
Right.
Not to mention, you have just more presses online. I mean, you've also got Furnace that's actually like really ramping up their production in Virginia, and like they're making great records as well. Like Gotta Groove has been making great records for such a long period of time. Like there's so many plants, and I feel bad now because I'm name checking, and like I don't want to leave anybody out that
RTI
they're gonna give me shit about it. I mentioned RTI actually, but
oh, you did?
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, I mean, oh my God, Don would have my ass if I didn't talk about RTI.
There's a lot. I mean, we've been using Waxworks in Louisiana, and they're incredible. Like the quality's been unbelievable, and they're fast, and there is a lot. And I mean, I know people that are in the process of opening plants up, so it's something that I think for me, I've always worried about. Like I'm having fun now, I'm selling records now, everything's good now, but at some point I'm gonna have to go back and get a real job. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
No, Dillon, don't get a real job.
No, listen. it would have to get real bad. But no, I think that vinyl will be here to stay forever. I really don't think. Well, as long as I can, as long as I'm around, I think I'll be able to work in it. And even in the early 2000s, before 2006 or whenever it started picking up, rare records were still selling. It's not like they weren't. So,
I mean, that's the thing about the used market too, though. I mean, let's be honest. Like, the used market would still be just on fire, whether or not the new was on top of it or not.
yeah.
Are we seeing any genres really starting to take a hit? And I'll give you an example, because a friend of mine is a toy collector, and he said in the 90s, Western toys were the hottest shit, right? People wanted Howdy Doody, people wanted Charlie McCarthy, those sort of things. Then they started those people were dying out, and now he can't really give those things away. Are we starting to see some sort of changes in the genres of used records that, 10, 20 years ago, they were hot, maybe now not so much?
I think so. So if you went to record shows 20 years ago, some of the highest, rarest stuff were like some Elvis records, some
That's
doo-wop
true.
type stuff, Buddy Holly,
Sinatra.
Sinatra, stuff like that. But because the guys that were in their 50s, 60s with disposable income, that's what they were looking for. And so that stuff was the hottest stuff around. Now, the people that were 60, 20 years ago are 80 now. And so there's such an influx of that stuff coming to the market, not to mention all the fans of it are dying off. And so there's not that many people that are into it. So stuff like that, like a lot of the 50s rock and roll, and it makes me wonder, will there be a day that Led Zeppelin's not worth anything? Because I don't think so, but because I think a lot of younger people like Zeppelin, but as time goes on, those older collectors, they pass away and their stuff just floods the market. And if there's not a fan base there, they turn into dollar records, So that's the only thing I've seen really take a hit. Country music has started doing better than it used to. Used to, country records were like dumpster, man. I mean, you could, but now, there's a lot of good country records that will move. Not really high dollar, but they still will sell. So almost every genre, you have people kind of coming out of the woodwork to get. I mean, except for polka and stuff. But I don't know.
What do you think, Billy? We got a polka
Billy
box set coming out next year?
No, no. But in fact, we did put out. I have to call this out just because it's such a wonderful record. Actually, I think I have a copy of it. And I am mad that we didn't sell it out, and we should have, because it's so great. Which is
Weird Al. Is Weird Al?
Which is the Carl Stalling Project, which is all the Warner Brothers cartoons themes.
Okay.
This came out on CD in the 90s, and it sold bananas copies. It was crazy how well it sold. This is such a fantastic record.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just holding it up for as long as possible. So I'm shilling for my company right now. Please go buy this record. Please ask your local record store to order this if they don't have it, because we have copies, and they shouldn't be in our building. They should be in your hands.
There we go.
So cartoon music, that's what I'm calling the next collectible genre. And I'm starting with Carl Stalling Project, so get on it, please, people. I mean, look, I think that you bring up country, which I think is really interesting. Country records of a certain era and a certain sound have always sort of had a value. So when you think about those RCA Studio B records, I mean, frankly, the same studio that Elvis would have recorded in, right? So you have this sound of an era of recording means that put the value in the records. And that's not to say that they weren't important records, whether it's Loretta Lynn or Waylon Jennings or Merle Haggard. But when you look at those records today, it's very specific channels that are still sort of deemed collectible. I really don't think any country records from the 90s are viable on vinyl. I think that it's so rare what the record could be that might make it make it in that space. Now, Dylan, you can correct me, but just knowing how the records sound.
I don't know, man. I mean, the Clint Black, those there's some '90s records that are worth a good amount of money.
No, there
Um,
are. I think it's so funny you'd say Clint Black because, like, I was going to think like there's only a couple guys that would actually. I mean, I think of Dwight Yoakam records, right? I even think of like the first couple Randy Travis records. Like those records, the sound on those records, it's like the sound of a jazz record. Like when you think about Rudy knew how to mic a room and record jazz bands. Yeah, the guys in Nashville knew how to mic a room. They knew how to record that music live.
I mean, Keith Whitley's another one, but
Oh
I
yeah.
think '90s country, if it starts getting some good vinyl issues, I think that will make a comeback. I just think that the way that the cycles go, I think '90s country, would do okay. But that's just my opinion. I don't know.
I
The
love it.
Garth Brooks,
I'm fascinated by that opinion, Dylan. I gotta like log that in the brain.
yeah, put it back there. The Garth Brooks box sets, bane of my existence. Holy crap! You talk about used stuff. The way he like did this pyramid scheme of if you buy them on the website and all this stuff. Nate, do you know
It
about
was
this?
it was
No,
terrible.
no,
It was
no.
Oh
terrible. It was
my
absolutely
gosh!
terrible.
So real quick detour. I guess his goal was to outsell the Beatles, and every disc he would sell
Yeah.
would count towards a record sale. And so he had like I don't know, like between the vinyl and CDs, it was like 20 something discs or something. And they ended up like if you buy two, you get one free or something on his website. So people were thinking they were going to be worth money down the road. So people were buying like tons of them. I've bought probably 10 collections. And then the people were like, oh, yeah, and I bought a bunch of those Garth Brooks box sets. So I get like 12 or 15 of these Garth Brooks box sets. And you can't sell them. Nobody wants them. And so, like, what we do is we break them open and we sell the records individually for like
And
$5 each. And
that's what
that's
you
the
should do.
only way we can get rid of them.
Yep.
Like,
Is
they
is the Chris Gaines record in there too?
no, I wish it was. I mean, I don't like that record, but I think it would
No,
sell
but I
better. But
mean,
maybe it wouldn't.
you know.
But yeah, it's that record has been terrible for everybody. That box set, it's like I think the Discogs meeting is like $20, and it's like a 20 something disc box
Oh,
set.
it's bananas. Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
It
But
is crazy.
anyways, that
But
country
yes, that
detour
is the
probably
reason
isn't
why it
necessary.
was about like trying to be number one on top of the Beatles. Yes.
So, guys, we've been here for about 90 minutes. I really appreciate you guys, your time, your wisdom, your thoughts. Before we go, let's fast forward, let's say a year from now. I'd love to do this again. I'd love to have this be a kind of a regular thing, actually.
Sure.
A year from now, when we're looking back at 2025, what do you think some of the things are that we'll be talking about then?
How right I was about '90s country. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Let me just tell you right now, I'm going to get to Warner Nashville and we're going to put out 5 records from the 90s. And I expect you to buy all of them, Dylan. I don't care if you're mostly a used store or not.
I didn't say I liked it. I just think that there's a good space for it in the market, and
No.
so much of that stuff is unavailable on vinyl. I just think it would do well. I just think it would.
What you need here is a Noble Records variant of those.
Oh my
I
God.
don't like '90s country. I'm just saying. But
Dylan dug himself into a hole and now
I guess
he
so.
doesn't, he's trying to dig himself out, but you can't dig yourself out by digging a hole. You just go in deeper, man.
I mean, some of it's okay. I'm just saying, like I've seen a trend.
Yeah.
A lot of people, anyways. In 20 the year, I hope we look back and see what a great year it was. But I just think it's going to keep trucking and doing really well. Like no year that we've been open for 5.5 years now, and we started in 2019. Every year we've grown. Every year we've done better than the year before. And so I think, well, I mean, that's just growing business. That's kind of what you want to see. But I think with vinyl, there's always interesting avenues you can go down, interesting things that you can release. And I think that what I do is so dramatically different than what Billy does. And so it's a cool perspective to get a wide open picture. But it seems like Billy's done a great job in doing work to preserve records and presenting it to a wider audience. So, I mean, what do you think, Billy, for the year?
I think that we'll be surprised again that we had another year that was positive. I think that people will be like, wow, going to 19 years, amazing, right? I think that it's going to be a normal up year. And a normal up year is, up a few points, right? I think like 24 just ended, vinyl in the US up 4.6%. I don't see any reason why that would be drastically different. I think that we will have done that in an environment that right now is unknown because we have a new president that comes into office, and there are things that they have talked about doing in the new administration that could very well impact a lot of what we do in the business. It's a lot of unknown. So I think that what we'll see in the year is a lot of unknown pressure on a business that is positive, growing, mature. Like let's get away from the idea that we're in a vinyl renaissance or hey, vinyl's back. Like there's still press just every day you get an alert like, oh, vinyl's back. It's bigger than ever. It's like this is the surviving dominant physical format for music. That's what this is. And it's vinyl. So I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see a harder commitment to D2C from a lot of artists, and um, I have to take off my Warner hat and put on my Billy Says Vinyl hat. I think that it's not the right strategy. I think that you have to have everybody in the ecosystem participating, and that's what you should be doing. I think that you get more eyeballs, you get more heat, you get more demand, you get more connection that way. I think that limiting anything by any channel, and that even includes records that come out only streaming and never come out physically. I think that you are making the fan uninformed by doing it that way. In my personal opinion of the way in which you should release music, and I think that we're going to see that happen in 2025, and you'll have people like me, hopefully, on the inside rattling cages and trying to convince people that there's a better way to do it. That's what I think. Grand, sweeping gestures of whatever. Yeah.
Any sort of changes in terms of the technology of records?
I mean, look, I think that, all the sustainability things that are coming to bear, you're going to see more PET vinyl come into the market. You're going to see more presses come online to make more of those records. And let's be clear, like PET is the most recycled plastic on the planet, and it can be endlessly recycled. Well, not endlessly. That's not true. I think just like with PVC, there's a certain melt point, repetitive that makes it not able to be stable. So, but making records from PET, the sound is going to get better. The production is going to expand. You're going to see that. That's going to happen. That is a new development in the making of a record. I don't know that you can call it a vinyl record, but you can certainly call it a record. Simply because it's not made from PVC, so it's kind of hard to call it that. So we'll have to come up with something that's neat and nifty that isn't PET, because that's not sexy at all. And I think that the other things that plants are doing around the world are also, you can't overlook the use of renewable energies and putting solar panels on the roofs of their buildings and using more efficient boilers and cooling towers and recycling all your flash. And I mean, there's all those things that they're doing. And there's also the sort of bio vinyl, the non-petroleum component copolymer. And again, I'm not the expert in saying this thing, so I'm sounding a bit like an idiot. But like, there's a part of vinyl that is petrochemical based, and they're replacing that with something that is not petrochemical, but it is food based, and the PVC behaves exactly like PVC. Sound quality, everything is exactly the same, and you're reducing your carbon footprint by a absolutely immeasurable amount that does make a difference in the end. So there's that coming online as well. So there's lots of ways in which a lot of plants are attempting to address all those issues, and that is a technological change. I I haven't been privy to anything around sort of new types of pressing machines or new attributes around lacquer cutting or even a new vendor producing lacquers. Heard lots of rumors, but no fact. So it would be nice to in 25 to finally see another vendor on board producing lacquers, so that we don't just have the one producer in the world for that.
I think Dylan's going to be making those actually in his back office.
Well,
Yeah, we'll see.
I hope he gears up with all the proper gear so that he doesn't get high on the fumes, as it were. But yeah.
Oh, you get high on the fumes? Then I'll make them in my backyard. That's a
Well, look, don't make him on another island continent out in the middle of nowhere, man. No, I know you're the center of the world, Nate. Come on, I know.
To me, I am. Look,
That's all that matters.
The one thing that I'm looking in 2025 to do, especially for my own collection, I'm done with filler copies. If it's, it's got to be VG plus or above. I'm going to be reducing my records. I'm going to start to really kind of pare them down. I've gotten to the point to where I think I have more records than time to listen to them. So I'm going to start being quite discerning.
So Nate, I just have to say one thing just really quick.
Yeah.
You do have too many records that you have time left in your life to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan definitely does. And he's a younger fellow, so Jesus Christ, man.
Maybe I'll start listening to two at a time.
I'm the same way, man. I'm looking at what I have, and I'm incredibly grateful and lucky. I have an office that I go to in New York, and I have thousands of records in that office, and that's where most of them are. And then I have a bit here at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I have here at home is I'm to the point of like I got this number of cubes, and that's all I can have. So I need to constantly review. And what I'm doing is like, do I love this record? Does it make my heart beat? Do I have a reaction to this record? I'll keep it. It doesn't, it's got to go.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I am putting it at local shops where I have trade value because I intend to buy more records.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop. I'm still chasing the goosebumps. I'm still looking for new music that does that. But yeah, I in terms of the quantity and that sort of thing, I'm going to be quite a bit more discerning, I believe.
I'm sorry, I just have to ask you a question. I know that we've been on this thing a long time.
Yeah.
You just said chase goosebumps. So what's the last thing that gave you goosebumps?
Oh, the Hard Quartet. Are you familiar with them? Stephen Malkmus, several other guys that are part of this quartet. It really is kind of like a bit of a super group. I've been listening to that album recently. It's on Matador. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Lots of things. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I find the goosebumps probably once every week or two. And that's why I keep going through different artists, just trying to find those ones that do it for me. So I'm a lot of catch and release,
I love it, catch and release. Dylan, what about you?
The last one for me, it's this guy named Steven Wilson Jr. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a
dude, my God.
Like singer-songwriter, and he released this album last year called Son of Dad. And like, just as a dad, and I love my dad, it's the most emotional record has ever made me, and I can't stop listening to it. Yeah. It breaks my heart. I love it. It's so good. So good. And I've heard of it before, like when it came out, and I guess I didn't really give it enough time. And then I just saw this YouTube video where he was singing this song called I'm a Song, and that song is unbelievable. Like one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. Just the way he will like just build this aesthetic to make you flash back to memories in your childhood and stuff like that. Is just, I mean, look, I got goosebumps talking about it. I mean, just so good, so good. Yeah. So that's the last one for me. But it seems like I love like the Black Sabbath and the super heavy stuff. But the stuff that really gives me goosebumps is always the singer-songwriter stuff.
Yeah. I imagine you are familiar with Arlo McKinley.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a couple of his records. But yeah, I love new singer-songwriter. I love Townes Van Zant's my favorite of all time. Listen to his stuff very regularly. But anyways, I love that stuff. So
cool. Right on.
Yeah. Billy, anything on top of your Goosebump list?
I would say the things that I've been most emotionally moved by lately are the new records by Lancome and the new record by Lisa O'Neill. Both those records are just devastatingly good.
Are they out now, or are they coming out?
No, they've been out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Both very Celtic, folky, but way more than that. Like, it's not just that. It's something deeper and spiritual and like of the primordial beginnings and the present. And they're fucking great. Great records.
I'll make a note of that.
I also love the new Nick Cave record too. The new Nick Cave, The Bad Seeds, I think is just
Wild God. Yeah.
oh my God. So good.
Yeah.
Such a great record.
Well, look, guys, I'm sure we could be here talking for many
right.
hours more. Thank you so much for making the time for this. And again, I'd love to make this kind of a regular thing because I think we went through quite a few interesting topics here, and hopefully this has been helpful to folks who've listened and watched this. All right, I'm going to stop at 3, 2, 1. All right. Again, always great to see those gentlemen. And by the way, if you want to see them too, there's a video version of this whole conversation over on Noble Records YouTube page, youtube.com/@Noble Records. So head over there and check it out, and make sure to subscribe to Dillon's channel if you're not already doing it. And that is it for this week's episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, thanks to everyone who's sharing these episodes on social media and in Reddit forums and Facebook groups. That is hugely appreciated. And those of you who are leaving positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, well, there is a special place in my heart for each of you. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.